welcome back to Swajaya YouTube channel. Today we are interviewing Balaji Vittal, and now I am becoming a villain, pure evil. Usually in films, we love the hero, we hate the villain. And there is a great villain called Pran, whose name was Raka in Jis Desh Mein Ganga Bahti Hai. And because he was named Raka, people stopped naming their children Raka after that. So such is the impact of villains of Hindi films on people. And of course, my brother is named Raka. That's a different thing. So when we come to villains, we hate them. We see heroes turning into villains like Ajit, and we see villains turning into heroes like Shatrughan Sinha. But hero usually stays hero. But it is the villain that needs to be analyzed because he represents the underbelly of society. He represents the dark side of the psychology of society. And here, after a long time, this is also a book in waiting like Gaata Rahe Mera Dil or a book on R.D. Burman. This is the pure evil. Bad Men of Bollywood. Recently, I have read the autobiography of the Bad Men, Gulshan Grover. So this book is all the more interesting because there are so many bad men in this book, not just one. Now, Balaji Vittal, I am very happy that you wrote the book.
Thank you.
Bringing out the villainy in villains and the importance of villains in Indian films. Now, what made you write this book?
Once again, this was proposed by HarperCollins quite a few years ago, saying that write a book on villains. So it was so exciting, I grabbed the offer immediately. But I didn't know what to write. What do you write about the back end of a script, right? You can write about a good man, but what can you write about a bad man? Because by nature, he's supposed to be the condemned one. So I had to bring him to the forefront, yet not glorify his misdeeds. And this book, let me tell you what it is not. It is not a biography of these actors. It is not a collection of essays on those films. It's about the nature of villainy, the various genre of villainy. It's like a rogues gallery walkthrough. It's you walk through a museum of all the the
Villains.
of the villains, and you see them showcased out there, their various forms, various genre, various subgenre, and how they have changed faces, how they have changed over the decades, their emergence, their significance, their relevance, and the nuances. So this again came from HarperCollins, and I was happy to grab the contract.
And here in the introduction itself, you made a quite interesting statement which actually needs to be analyzed and discussed. We need villains to experience the satisfaction of comfortably externalizing the bad elements within ourselves and then witnessing their exorcism in public. Are you talking about the psychology of film viewer?
I'm talking about human sentiment. If there were no law, if there were no fear of karma, we would happily go and do the wrong things, because wrong things fetch you a lot of material comfort. If you do the wrong things, it gets you money, it gets you power, it gets you the women, right? It gets us the forbidden fruit. What holds us back is our own values, the fear of karma, and the law. So in this book, what we are trying to say is the villain does not need to follow any rules. He can do what he wants, which is what makes him more colorful, which is what makes him more powerful, which is what makes him hate him publicly, but secretly feel, I wish I had a mansion like that. I wish I had a big car like that. I wish I had a drive-through sort of a staircase like what he has, right? It makes us wish for some of the things that he has, yet we know it is out of reach. Because to get that, one has to cross a lot of barriers, which is maybe not worth doing. That's what this book is about.
But this word called witnessing their exorcism in public and externalizing the bad elements within ourselves.
Yeah, because externalizing the part of that which wishes us to do bad things or which eggs us to do bad things, right from a childhood where a boy puts his hand into a cookie jar, right, or from a teenage boy sneaking out of home to meet a girl somewhere, right, or even even a grown-up man doing certain things, or sometimes bending the rules, flexing the rules, jumping a red signal, right? Those things can cause immeasurable damage, and maybe they do. So when we see a villain, we know that he represents all that is bad in the society. And when he gets beaten up at the end, we like to watch that because it's like all the bad elements condensed in that one form. And to see him, and somewhere we feel a symbolic burning of an effigy, saying that all the bad things have been finally burnt in the penultimate scene of the film.
I'll be more villainy.
Sure.
Like when you see a villain rape somebody on the screen, does it mean to say that the viewer himself is putting himself in the villain role, doing the bad thing, and when he gets beaten up, he is being exorcised?
We hate the villain for his act, right?
But somewhere along the line, maybe we are a part of egging the villain on.
Not really.
Subconscious.
No, I tell you what. We hate the villain when we see him doing that bad act, when we see him oppressing people, beating up old men, raping young women. We feel, boss, he should be killed. And when we see him getting killed in the end, we feel happy. But what happens is when the villain is not committing a bad act, and when the camera pans only on his wealth and power, we feel, this is good here. Look, he has so much wealth. He has so much money. He's got so much power. Right? So there is, at times, we are slightly envious of what he has, but we hate him and unequivocally hate him for what he does.
Now, how do you explain this? Like a villain being clapped when he beats a hero, like Shatrughan Sinha being the villain. So, how do you explain this? Does it go to greatness of the actor or the script?
I think it had to do with the fact more of Vinod Khanna, in Mera Gaon Mera Desh, beating up Dharmendra and getting clapped for it, right? Even Gabbar Singh, when he says that kitne aadmi the, people start clapping for him. I would say it's a script and the acting performance. It was Vinod Khanna, it was Amjad Khan who won those sort of, the public accolade, or even Mogambo Khushwa. People started cheering loudly.
Yes.
It is about the script, the way the character is written, and the acting performance.
And still, I see one of my friend copied this kind of thing from Mogambo. Whenever he sits, he does this.
With a lot of rings on his fingers.
Yeah. He does this.
Yeah, right.
Even today.
And how symbolic it is. His hand is over a globe.
Yes.
Right? Which means he wants to grab power of the whole world and सारी दुनिया को मुट्ठी में करना चाहता है. Look how symbolic it is. Or Shakal and Yadav ki Barat. He wears white gloves. He never does anything bad. Even killing of Satyan Kapoor in that telephone booth. वो क्या बोलता है? मौत का फरिश्ता तेरे दरवाजे पे खड़ी है देख. He gets someone else to do it. Right? He keeps his hands clean. He is clean. Right? So how these things are so symbolic, or how Ajit has become a cult with his jokes. So the way the characters are crafted makes us clap for them. But make no mistake, we hate the villains on screen and we love to see them getting punished. Right? But we see those multicolored telephones and the heart-shaped bed and the big limousine cars that he drives. We feel, yeah, he had a good life. He has a good, all that trappings of wealth. That is good. That part is good.
No, but afraid with films like Ishaqzadeh and such things, there is no clear-cut villain in those films.
Yeah, I don't think we will see those larger-than-life, huge 25-foot poster cutout villains like a Gabbar or a Mogambo or a Shakal. I don't think we'll see that anymore because it is more becoming grey. It's a mature audience. It's a mature filmmaking guild that is saying that there is a bit of grayness in everything. Even
like
in
Pushpa.
article,
Like Pushpa.
Like Pushpa. I've not seen Pushpa, honestly. Okay, so like an Article 15, right? He's doing the right thing, but he's also thinking. even Nasir, who plays at CBI, even he is not completely black or white, right? Because everyone has to bend and flex a little bit. Because the society makes you bend and flex a little bit. Sometimes, it makes you just go near the border or edge or slightly cross over and then come back. So there is a bit of grayness. That's why even villains are more like part of the normal people that we see. See, tell me, if you see someone like Mogambo walking on the road in that outfit, will you be scared of him? Will you laugh at him?
He's a joker.
He's a joker, right? Rather, it is a common man like Satya in Satya, whom we get scared of.
Yes.
He lives in the same building. He's very helpful to old men. He's very nice, very courteous. He's got a beard, but he's got 17 murder charges against him. Can you guess that the person living just down in the same corridor has 17 murder charges against him?
Yes.
Can you believe that? You can't believe it. So that's what has become of the new age villain, where the villain lies in the act he does, the specific act that he does, but otherwise he's a normal person.
Now coming to your classification of villains, where do you classify Dilip Kumar character in Amar? Because he is a hero, then he rapes Nimi, then it's like he doesn't want to come out with it, wants to marry Madhubala, and then his conscience bites him. Madhubala, he leaves Madhubala and marries Nimi. Is he good or bad? Like you said, we have black and white films till 70s. Later we have grey areas and all those things coming into it. So where do you classify that Amar with Dilip Kumar?
If he's raped, he's bad. It would come under the chapter of Abru, sexual domination. Though I don't think I mentioned it very clearly. But the fact is that if he has raped, he's bad. That act is bad and he deserves to be punished. Okay? There is no redeeming feature that he loved her, he didn't get her, so he raped her. That's no excuse. Right? That's very clear black and white villainy. But somewhere the script writer, maybe because he was Dilip, okay, what if he had been Pran? Would the script have been sympathetic to him? No. Because he's Dilip Kumar, somewhere I think we try to build in a backstory saying he was in love with a poor guy and he tries to marry her and all that. But the fact is, it's an act of rape. You're trying to subjugate, dominate through your sexual power. That's what you're doing. So that is no different from Raj Babbar's role, raping Bharti Saxena in Sabka Tarazu. It's no different from that. It is just that sometimes the script used to get partial to the lead hero. They forget that it is the character and they think it is still Dilip Kumar. It is not Dilip Kumar, it is a character. Right? So the script used to be biased in favor of the star. That changed later. If you look at the post-2000 film, who are the guys playing villain? Hrithik Roshan, John Abraham, Amir Khan, Amitabh Bachchan,
Shah Rukh
Khan. Right? So the script is not biased. दोनों को बराबरी का मौका दिया जाता है. Now you fight and let's see who wins. In many cases, the villain has escaped. If you look at a film called Ittifaq in 2017, it's Siddharth Malhotra. It was a reprise of the 1970 Ittifaq played by Rajesh Khanna. In this, the guy escapes. It's a one-on-one between Akshay Khanna and Siddharth Malhotra. And that guy wins. I'm not saying he should have won. I was not happy about him winning. Because somewhere it didn't give me the satisfaction. We wish the flight could have been grounded and he could have caught him and brought him out of the aircraft and taken him to the jail. That didn't happen. But the fact is, it's a more matured script where it's saying anyone could have won. Yes, there are people who commit murder and get away. And it's a story.
And I think the latest film Jalsa has this area in it.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
Not yet, sir. I'm a bit behind all this. I need to catch up. I need to quickly catch up on all this.
And now coming to your categorization of villains. Now, how did you, on what criteria, what basis you have classified? There are about 7 chapters in the book.
Sections.
7 sections in the book. Mera Bharat Mahan is obviously about 40s. And then Mere Hamdam Mere Dost, the enemies within. How did you arrive at this classification?
Okay. There is an enemy of the individual, there is an enemy of the society, there is an enemy of the nation. Enemy of the individual is the Mere Hamdam Mere Dost, right? Where it's a dishonest employee or a distrustful boss who molests his employees in office, right? Like in Yes Boss. Or there is the Sauteli Ma, Sautela Bhai, the Mama, Chacha, Saas, Bahu, each of them trying to overdo the other. Or the best friend of the hero trying to, snatch away the wife of the hero, or the sexual domination, or the child molesters, the enemies within the home and the society, and enemies within the home or the workplace that we know. That is that. Second is the enemy of the society, someone like the Sahukar or the Zamindar, right? Who oppress those small town villagers and who borrow the do bigha zameen, right? Mother India. So they exploit and they wield the authority over small sections of the people. They are enemy of the nation, enemy of the society. Also smugglers. Smugglers are actually enemy of the society. They're also enemy of the society, because what they're doing is they're stealing, they are hoarding food grains. Okay, let me call them the hoarders and the black marketers, the dacoits, the sahukars. They are enemy of the society. Then, if you look at the smugglers who are stealing the Nataraj ki Murti and sending it abroad, or the terror mafia, or the terrorists, they are enemy of the nation as a whole. So these are three broad categorization, and then I went into saying, or even the foreigner villains, they're enemy of the nation. So I took these four categories, and then I said break it into various genre. Foreigner villain, the psychopath, the various section, and then I mapped it to a timeline, because not every genre of villainy existed in every decade. So the first level separation, the first level segmentation was based on the genre, various genre, cover everything, and then map it to the timeline. That is why the Mera Bharat Mahan, that is the foreigner as a villains in the pre-independence era, had to come in the beginning of the book. The Dhoom Machale chapter couldn't have come in the beginning.
Yes.
Because that would have upset the entire chronology. So it had to follow a segmentation, a logical segmentation of the arrangement of. Look at it as a big black box of villainy. You open the box and take out all the goodies and put them in various logical folders, like the way you have arranged this library, something like that, right? So it also had to follow a particular chronology. So it was a mix of both again.
And when I was reading your chapter on the outlaws, especially Robin, Poolan, and Veerappan, I feel we are in a way attracted towards evil, because we make films about Charles Shobaraj, Veerappan, Poolan Devi, but not the Good Samaritans, which are like, what do you see?
See, the Good Samaritan is always there. Every hero in every film is a Good Samaritan. If you look at the standard stock hero, he is a good Samaritan. He's a good man. He's a good son. He's a good brother. He's a good, he's a good friend. He's a good lover. He's a devoted husband. The good man is always there. It's the bad man who makes us sit up and look. Hey, what is he doing? He's doing something which contradicts my sensibilities, right? And if you look at the dacoits, the outlaws, the Robin, Veerappan, Poolan, and all that. In the outlaws, there were two distinct categories. Some of them were these Robin Hoodian villains, because they were the direct output of the zamindars and the sahukars. They used to oppress the villagers, and there was total lawlessness. The police couldn't help. So what do? They became dacoits, right? At the same time, they became dacoits. They were something of a vigilante who protected the villagers with their might, because the police was absolutely, nincompoops out there. But then there were the other variety of absolute black villains like Gabbar. He has no backstory. No zamindar oppressed him. He was born defective. He was born like that, right? So in the outlaws, there are two different sections. And in outlaws, I've also covered not just the Chambal ki dacoit, but also the Arabian Nights.
Yes.
The characters, like Abdullah. Or even if you look at the very West, the Sergio Leone inspired the Wild West sort of outlaws in films like Kote Sikke or Sholay. Because actually, if you look at it, Gabbar Singh was partly inspired by the westerns, the Dollars trilogy and all that. So that's what it was.
And actually, you name the names or the titles of the chapters is highly creative. The good, the bad, and the Gabbar. So how did you?
That's because I had to show the connect with the good, the bad, the ugly, the Dollars trilogy,
Yes.
Sergio Leone. So it had to have that link. So when people read it, they know, okay, it's going to somewhere link up to the fact that Gabbar was an output of the Western, the Wild West, the outlaws genre. Or if you look at this chapter, there's a chapter called Darling.
Yes.
Darling. So it could tell you that it's about serial killers, right? Or take any Pati Patni or Who.
Yes.
And actually, so it's about the presence of a third person in a marriage. Okay? Or Mehendi Rang Laegi, blood on her hands. It's about the women who kill their husbands. Mehendi for the married women, Mehendi Rang Laegi, blood on her hands.
Yes.
The Mehendi hasn't even dried and she's already killing her husband. So that's how the chapter needs to be. For example, when you enter a museum, you see various sections in the museum, right? And in front of each door, you would expect a title to say, what am I going to see inside? If you go to IKEA, you want to buy furniture, you want to buy clothes, you want to buy something else. you would actually like the signboard to tell you exactly what to expect inside. That's what I'm trying to do.
And as I went through your book, a doubt arose in my mind. Like, when did the villainy became legitimized? Earlier, villain had to be beaten in the end, or jailed, or killed. But as we went along, somewhere along the line, hero himself became the villain, and it is legitimized. Like, if you see the Doom series, they can't catch the culprit; he escapes. So, when did this in the Indian film development of characters, development of stories, which is almost concomitant with the changes in society, when did this evil doing has become legitimized?
I would say in the beginning of 90s, with Shah Rukh Khan coming in as the obsessed young man, right? In Bazikar, it is sort of justified, saying that
His family
because
is
Madan
just
Chopra did that, he went and did all this. So it sort of got legitimized. How is it different from Shankar in Yadav Ki Barat or
Diwar,
Vijay in Trishul
or Diwar for that
or
matter.
Diwar? The point is, Shankar in Yadav Ki Barat also was trying to avenge his parents' murder, but he avoided collateral damage. He would never hurt the innocents,
Yes.
right? But Ajay in Bazikar went after the innocents. He killed Madan Chopra's daughter, and with great relish.
Yes.
And then he killed two other innocent people who could have become a possible witness to his murder. So what is he? And then he tears up the photograph and eats it. So everything shows a sort of a mental unhingement. He's so caught up with this revenge.
Psychopathic.
Psychopathic. He has lost sense of what is the absolute right and what is absolute wrong.
Same
Okay.
as that.
Same as Dar. He's so much in love with her that she goes mad at one point. Okay. At the end, there is some modicum of sympathy also built into the character because he almost, he catches Sunny Deol like, "Say, maaf kar do, mare hoye ko kya maroge?" And there's a backstory built in saying that he's ultimately people saw him as a lonely, motherless, sick boy. He's sick, right?
So there's
Maybe a
sympathy
little bit
for
of there's some sympathy for him. So somewhere the bad act, I wouldn't say that they sympathized with him. They built in a backstory to give the option to the audience whether you want to sympathize with him or not.
It means what you mean to say is before, like in 70s or 80s, hero was doing bad deeds, but internally he was good, like Vijay or Shankar. But later in 90s, he became pure black, pure evil.
Yeah, some of
But
them.
yet with a
Some
backstory.
amount of backstory. See what happens. What is an anti-hero? Shyam Benegal told me this. An anti-hero is a person with a good intent, but with a bad means of achieving that intent. That is anti-hero. Whereas a villain has a bad intent to start with. Okay, that's why you see Vijay and Shankar. All those characters, they basically had a good intent. They never hurt any innocents. They were ultimately good people. If when they got what the revenge they wanted to take. In the 90s, if you look at even a movie called Agni Sakshi, Nana Patekar's movie, he's again obsessed. He's oppressing her, he's torturing her, he's put that like the William Till, he puts an apple on her head and shoots apple and all that. She's terrorized. She's saying, "Mujhe bhag jana yahan se," right? But somewhere the story is built in saying, "Meri maa kothe pe thi, ye thi, wo tha." Somewhere he built a little bit of, so when he dies, actually says, "Bechara aadmi tha yaar, he had a bad life, chalo gaya."
Now that you mention, Agnisakshi or Dar or Bazigar have their roots in Hollywood films. And in Hollywood films, if you see, the villain is never given a proper background. Like Agnisakshi's original Sleeping with the Enemy.
Or Seven.
Seven. So there is no background for the psychopathic nature of the villain. So when it got translated into Hindi films, you are giving him a kind of backstory.
Yeah.
So does it mean that somewhere along the line, films are also legitimizing this kind of evil nature in society, like borrowing or bringing westernized kind of psychopathic killings or nature into our society?
I don't think they're legitimizing them. Can you put on pause? Some noise out there.
Okay, start.
Well, I wouldn't say they're legitimizing it. They're just trying to build in a backstory to explain why he went bad. Oh God.
Oh,
It's okay.
right, sir.
No, I don't think they're trying to legitimize it. they're just trying to explain as to why this guy went bad. Whereas, because ultimately this guy is a lead character. Shah Rukh Khan was a lead character.
Nana Patekar.
Nana Patek's character, and Kajol was a lead character in Gupt. One of the lead characters in Gupt. So they had to build in some sort of a backstory. Whereas they didn't have to do it for a Pran or, or the non-Robin Hood dacoits. They didn't have to do that. I think it had to do with, again, the same thing going back to Dilip Kumar in Amar. Because in real life, he's a big star. He's a big actor. So you have to build a little bit of, that sympathy. I don't think they were trying to legitimize crime. I think they were only trying to so build in a backstory to his act to maybe soften the blow of what he was. Why would the Hollywood counterparts not do that? Because they felt, for example, if you look at Oi Lucky Lucky Oi, right? It doesn't show any backstory. He's saying he's just like that, as a kleptomaniac. He just pinches whatever he wants. Take Saat Khoon Maaf. She considers herself vigilante. She's saying, if this guy is bad, it's my duty to punish him. And she kills off the people. So I think what comes in is a little bit of the filmmaker's perspective in terms of saying that let people also try and see why he became bad, which is not necessary. For example, if you look at Sangram, Ashok Kumar is bad because he's bad. He didn't have a bad childhood. His father was very loving.
So you are speaking about 1950 Sangram, 40-50 Sangram.
Yes.
Because there are 3 Sangrams. Ashok Kumar Sangram, Dilip Kumar Sangram, and Akshay Kumar Sangram.
Correct.
3 Kumars.
Right. So I'm talking about the 1950 Ashok Kumar Sangram, from where maybe Tanga Padakam was taken. Right. There was no backstory as to why he became bad. He lost his mother, but the little boy started gambling from a young age. He started not going to school. He was born defective. And that's what made the character so interesting, because it didn't show any backstory to justify. He said, "Kanun Wanun buzdilon ke liye hota hai," and he gets killed in the end. It is just a defective piece out of the factory that has to get discarded. And I think that was a more mature way of showing, rather than saying why he became bad.
And how far is Mahesh Bhatt responsible for creating a different kind of villain? Because I read here, you put it in a box. Vajpayee said that Mahesh Bhatt had called him up to congratulate him. Black as black is boring. Your victory lay in winning the audience sympathy and making it great. You brought out emotion from this character.
Yeah, that was a Virendra Pratap in this one. What is that?
Sarak.
No. Manoj Vajpayee.
Manoj Vajpayee kada? Rajniti.
See, Virendra Pratap was equivalent of Duryodhana. We have always seen Duryodhana as bad. But look at how isolated he was. Right? He didn't have God on his side. He kept fighting. Right? Agreed, he did the wrong things. Agreed. But somewhere, he was also a little bit of an underdog. Right? For the same reason as why the film called Kalyug. Victor Banerjee's father had built the business. And then the other cousin group, they come and sort of start competing with him. So there is a little bit of a different point of view that Prakash Jha brought in Rajniti. Which is why the character looked a little bit of grey rather than complete black. There are so many interpretations of Mahabharata and the characters. For example, what man would allow his wife to get disrobed in public? He could have walked out of the game a round before that, right? He could have said, "Let me become your slave, but let my wife not come out." So these are things, and Yudhishthira comes out of shining white because he's Yudhishthira, we accepted him. Right? But what woman, is it not the husband's duty to protect his wife first? How did he put her at stake? He could have said, "I concede, I lose the game." Right? He didn't do that. So there are shades of grey in Virendra Pratap's character that he brought out that lent more texture to the whole thing. Just the way that Victor Banerjee sort of was there, and Karan Singh, which is Rishi Kapoor cutting. So that's why he would have done it. So that I thought that I found that pretty interesting. There was no justification. He said it's business. It's everything is fair in love and war, and that's what Krishna, the role played by Nana Patekar, it says. It tells him in the end. It tells Ranbir Kapoor in the end, where उसने कोई रहम किया था नहीं ना तुम्हारो.
And as I went through the book,
Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. As I went through this, and I got a feeling that you are strong in 70s, 80s, and 90s, but a bit weak before that. Why did that impression come? Because you started with before independence, and everything was you were mentioning old films too, but somehow the impression comes that you are more comfortable in dealing films after 70s.
Okay. If you look at 30s and 40s, I think I've covered that extensively. If you look at the foreigner villains.
Yes.
And in the immediate aftermath, a big portion of that has been covered in the anti-hero section, where it says Dreams and the Cities, the 1940s and 50s. Because that was the time of the struggle, the post-independence, when people flocked to Bombay to get a job. They didn't get a job, and they ended up as Awara, they ended up as taxi driver.
And Devanand represented it.
Devanand or Raj Kapoor represented it, right? Or Jal in those movies. So I have covered the 50s there. And also if you look at the chapter called The Neighborhoods, which was the earliest avatar of the gangsters, who are the 8 to 10 men groups with choppers and small. Even there I have covered about the 50s, the thugs and the local goons and the gangsters, or the small time gangsters who are into hoarding and black marketing, like films like Footpath. Right, so there I've covered Anwar Hussein's role. There also I've covered K.N. Singh, the first corporatized. No one looked better than him in a dinner jacket and a tuxedo and a bow tie. He looked absolutely fantastic. I've covered films like Howrah Bridge. I've covered Marine Drive. Okay, all that he stood for. So there is a fair bit of 50s coverage. It's spread over the two
Different
chapters, Dreams and the City and the Neighborhoods. If you read these two, you'll get a flavor of the 50s. 60s also, there is a coverage in the foreigner villain section in the films like Hakikat, where China was there and Pakistan came it came in Prem Pujari, late fag end. And 60s also was the time when Pran Saab or Raka has been covered, Ganga Jamuna has been covered, right? Ganga Jamuna, Raka, and quite a bit of, if you look at even some of the 60s has been covered. Pran's role in Ramo Sham has been covered, right? Or Ye Raat Phir Na Aayegi, the cheating friend. Mumtaz is a villain in Ye Raat Phir Na Aayegi. So the coverage of 50s, see, the point is, the book doesn't follow a chronology. Chronology is level 2 segmentation. Level 1 is the genre. Level 1 is go by the genre. Level 2 is subordinated to level 2, which is the chronology, is subordinated to level 1. That's why the book is not arranged as 1940s for the villains, 1950s for the villains, 60s, 70s. It's not like that. It's genre. So you'll find the coverage of 50s and 60s in various parts of the book. So
Continue.
So you'll find the anti-hero somewhere referring to the 1940s and late 40s and 50s. You'll find the small thugs and in the 60s. So you'll find them covered in various sections.
Yes. Here in Manmohan 1936, a storyline resembling that of Devdas. So you have covered it, but somehow it is camouflaged or it is submerged by this kind of categorization.
Because it comes one level under. See, when you look at an Excel sheet, when you look at segmentation, you look at what is the primary segmentation, what is secondary segmentation. The primary segmentation is a genre. Because for a long time, I debated with the idea of whether to put it timeline wise. But then not everything gets covered in every timeline. Not everything. So assuming that with a chapter called The Villains of the 1950s. Okay. I have to talk about the anti-heroes. I have to talk about Devanand Raj Kapoor type of anti-heroes. I have to talk about K.N. Singh. Everything there and a little bit of the dacoits, right? And then move to 60s, talk about the same thing all over again. Then people say, yeah, why am I reading about the same genre in every chapter? Right? You covered the dacoits in the 1950s in Jagga, in Awara. Again, you're talking about dacoits in 1960s in Ganga Jamuna and your Jisech Ganga Beti hai. Why not take the dacoits, finish off in one go and move to the other? Right? Because I'm happy to talk about dacoits in 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s.
They're everywhere.
Everywhere. every section I'm talking about the same dacoit, sorry, or every section I'm talking about the same smugglers. Okay, there were smugglers in 50s, there was not too many in 60s, there were smugglers in 70s. So every section I'm reading the same smugglers, same dacoits, everything. Why? Right? So that's why I flipped it over and I said, make it genre. Go genre wise with the primary segmentation, and this one comes below that.
And one other question is there going to be a pure evil, the bad women of Bollywood?
There already is. If you look at it, the chapters in Pati Patni or Who, it's actually Pati Patni or Who. Actually, I'll tell you a story behind this. The chapter was actually called Pati Patni or Wo. But in Microsoft Word, there's a spell check, auto spell check. It's auto corrected the Wo to Who.
Oh, it fits.
Then I said, yeah, why not? It's a good idea. So keep it as Who and put a question mark after that. So it's Pati Patni or Who. There I have covered both about the men who had affairs with other women, or the wives who voluntarily got into an affair with someone else. Right? So that is an act of villainy as well. And then this thing of even Vishwasghat or Mere Hamdam Mere Dost. There are roles of Bindu covered in Do Raste, how she breaks up the house, right? Or where other, in other chapters where there is a glowering, Lalita Pawar in Mr. and Mrs. 55, how she tells her niece, "Shadi karo, fir nikal do.
एक महीने में.
Ek mahine mein nikal do usko." So it is again spread across. That's why maybe it's not that obvious. But then the chapter about Mehendi Rang Layegi, Blood on Her Hands, is all about women.
But still, I feel the bad men are so bad that they submerge the bad women.
Yeah, maybe I should write a book on the bad women of
Bad
Bollywood.
women.
Maybe.
It's
But some of this will come into that as well. So we'll have to go deeper into that.
So actually, it has been so nice talking to you, and there are so many other things that I would like to
Sure.
speak about you. And there are two final questions.
Sure.
One is, what are your future projects? Are you thinking about them or waiting for the publisher to give you an idea? And another one is, like in the beginning, you said that you were so focused on becoming an engineer or doctor or something like that, and you did not really understand your writing capacity. But would it have been possible to have the same kind of lifestyle had you been a full-time writer?
Depends on how successful a writer I would have become. If I would have become if I had been as successful as an Amish or a Chetan
But
Bhagat,
they are creative writers. They write fiction.
that's okay. So whatever I would have written, okay, even non-fiction writers make a lot of money. I mean, quite a few of them make a lot of money. So depends on how successful I would have been. Then maybe I would have had the same lifestyle, maybe even better.
But considering the books that you have written,
Ah.
do you think you could have lived on writing?
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know whether I would have been that good a writer, whether my books would have sold that much.
Because as a Telugu writer who is much published, I envy English writers because they get commission, because they get royalty, they get nationwide recognition. But is it really a case of the other side being green?
No, but I'll tell you, I think Telugu music, literature, my understanding, is quite celebrated in certain parts of the Indian diaspora. If you look at in US and all that, I think they still, there are quite a few shows and music sessions and literary sessions that happen in Singapore, I know that, where there's a huge, Telugu community, or even in US, there's a massive Telugu community. I think it has to be more of that. And whatever little recognition I've got, I'm grateful to God. I'm grateful to all the people who read my book. I think...
and you should be grateful to all the people who criticize you.
Absolutely. And grateful to all the people who call me for interviews like this. I'm grateful. I think it's pure blessings.
And what about your future projects?
Yeah, I'll have to think of something very quickly because HarperCollins has asked me to come out with my own idea. And I'll have to do that very quickly in the next maybe 15-20 days and submit a proposal. I'll have to do that.
And would it be a joint proposal or
No, this one would be solo
Solo
again.
only.
Solo again.
So thank you very much, Balaji Vittal for enriching our interest in Hindi film world through your books, and hopefully your next book will be entirely different and throwing light on different aspect of Hindi films
hope
and
so.
Hindi film songs. and hopefully there will be a sequel to Gaata Rahe Mera Dil, and hopefully Dila Shair Hai Gamma Nagma Hai maybe the title, and hopefully there will be a sequel to
Pure Evil.
Pure Evil with the
Bad
evil
Women
women,
of
bad
Bollywood.
women. So there is endless possibilities.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
wish
Thanks
all
for
the
calling
best.
me here. It's been great chatting with you. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you very much, Balaji Vittal ji.
Thank you, sir.
మొత్తం ఇప్పుడు
ఎగరాల్సి వస్తుంది.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.